I'm so excited, Rania, to have you on the Be the Solution podcast this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Maria. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm excited to talk with you. I've known you now for, well over a decade, but it might be more than that. Not sure. And I never had the opportunity to sit down with you and get your story. So today we're going to do that.
Sounds
You've been a
perfect.
licensed attorney for 36, 7 years?
37, yes.
37 years.
37
How
this
did you just, let's start with this. Why? Why did you decide to be an attorney of all things?
It started when I was 6. I said I wanted to be an attorney. I read a book by F. Lee Bailey, and it's never really changed. I've been fighting for people since I was young, since I was around that age. So it just is a natural fit.
So 6-year-old Rania reads this book. And then what? You tell your parents,
That I want to be a
Mommy,
lawyer.
Daddy, I want to be a lawyer. And they say,
Oh, they were excited. I guess I don't know if they initially thought I really meant it. Because I think children sometimes change. Like today you want to be a fireman and the next day you want to be a nurse. But I don't know. My parents, knowing me, probably knew I meant it, and I stuck with it. So the only other thing
that's
is, yeah, I'm triple degreed undergrad. And I hit a psychology class in my senior year of college that made me think I wanted to go and do that first. I had planned on getting my master's in psych, but started as a SEPTA lawyer. So I couldn't really afford to go back to school. So I never did.
wow. So you decided at 6, and then did you just go around saying, okay, let's practice. I'm just kidding around, but I'm serious. Like as a
Basically,
kid,
all the kids knew. And like I remember in 3rd grade, one of the guys teasing me, he's like, "Oh, you're going to be rich." And I said, I don't want to be rich. I just want to help people. Because that's always been my bent. It's just inherent in me. And so basically, yeah, I mean, everybody knew. My whole life was geared towards it.
how about that? That's so unusual. You don't hear that often. Most of the times, young people are going to college and they're trying to decide what their major is going to be, like me.
Yeah, that's what happens, I guess, to a lot of people. But some people, I don't know. It was just, it's inherent. It's my passion. People are my passion, but the law is really, really my passion. And using it to help people is a great thing.
I love that. And you do help a lot of people. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But tell me, so you have been in an industry which what you do is predominantly male. How has that impacted you personally?
Different fields of law are different. Once I really wanted to be a criminal lawyer. So when I was 6, I wanted to be a criminal lawyer. I started out mostly as a personal injury lawyer. As I said, I started with SEPTA, and then went on to some small firms. But when I got into criminal, which was in 1997, it was definitely still a predominantly male role. And women, in my opinion, we had that glass ceiling, right? And we had that I have to do better. I have to be better. I have to know more. I have to be prepared. It was an old boys network, especially in the criminal field. It took me a while to break in, and thankfully I did. A lot of the guys are great, and it was very difficult. Today, at least out of the district attorney's office and the public defender's office, I would say at least 50% of the lawyers are women. And I know there's at least there are a couple former DAs that kind of went out on their own or went into private practice after they left the office, and one in particular that comes to mind, that said that I was sort of I broke the glass. I was not by any means the first female to have her own firm as a criminal lawyer in the city, but because I got a nickname and because of my record, it was different, and I broke through. So I'm also a guy's girl. I hang out more with, I was a tomboy. So.
Breaking through. And I'm sure that was so easy. Kidding.
Yeah.
Tell me about it, because I can relate. And I'll tell you about that in a minute, but tell me about what it was like. People think like, oh, you just did that. No, I mean, there's a certain person that it takes to kind of do what you did, and it's like a lot of, like, I would say, blood, sweat, and tears.
It was when I started my own firm, particularly, which was in '97. It's scary. I'm not a native Philadelphian. I didn't go to high school with a ton of people or college that could refer me cases. So it was built upon contacts I had through the Bar Association, or it was built really upon once I opened up a neighborhood office, which was in 1998. I started in Center City and opened up an ancillary office. And it was difficult. There were days you didn't know if you were going to be able to make payroll to pay your staff. There were days in court. I'm totally self-taught in criminal law. I didn't have a mentor. My law school was a little bit different, so I kind of came out of law school different than other people anyway. But there was no camaraderie. It was hard. Sometimes it was hard. You'd see the guys joking around and talking, and you would be excluded, and they just kind of look at you like, who's this blonde? And then once I started getting things under my belt and getting trials under my belt, slowly but surely they learned that, I was really there to stay. I was there to play, and I was there to fight. But it took years. It took years. Some of the guys more than others were easier. The funny thing is, it's sometimes for me, it's more difficult sometimes with some of the female judges than the male judges. So there's that dynamic going on. I had a judge threaten me with contempt. It made the newspapers. She wound up ultimately not doing that.
What was that about?
I have no idea. I still have no idea. I had a client one day. It was the second time that she threatened me with it. And she saw me from the robing room before she came into the courtroom. And she came out and said, if you say one thing, I'm going to hold you in contempt. So she's going on and on. I didn't even say good morning, Your Honor, which I always say because I show respect for the court. And she goes through this whole thing, and I said, she had called my case, and I said, bail review. And that's all it was my client was there for a bail review. And she had the sheriffs put me in the back. And the sheriffs by then, because you have that dynamic too, have become my buddies. They knew that I was a fighter. I've represented a lot of their friends or maybe some relatives. And so this is a funny story. They couldn't put me in the back. They wouldn't. So they took me downstairs, and we went to the jury room, and we went and got a Coke from the machine, and we went outside. I was a smoker. I had a cigarette. They took me to where I could have a cigarette. The guys from the next courtroom, when the sheriffs took me back up, to the courtroom. You're between two courtrooms because they share the sheriffs and the elevators. And one of the guys made a paper plate saying, "Save Rania," and he's walking by at his lunchtime on a stick. And unbeknownst to me, by that point, okay, now this was in 2013. So by this point, I've been around for almost 20 years. Well, 13, a little over 10, 15 years. And I didn't know that 4 of the guys, when they heard in the building that I had been held, it was being held in contempt, they ran in to help me and to represent me. And when an attorney gets held in contempt, there has to be a contempt hearing. And then they get held in contempt. The judge threatens you with it, and it gets a special docket. And that didn't wind up happening, is the long story short. But that was with a woman. Now I think that our relationship is different with that particular judge. But for a while it was very rocky, and that's woman on woman. That's not coming from the guys or a man. So there are other dynamics to being a woman in certain fields of the law. And it's really in the criminal more than some of the others. It's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting and very brave, actually.
We have an ethics code, and we're supposed to be zealous advocates. And in all honesty, I was sitting there going, do I say something? I have to protect my client. Do I say something? I have to protect my client. I don't want to get held in contempt, but I have to protect my client. That's my job. That's my job. So
Was she just in a bad mood?
No. I still, to this day, I don't know what it was all about. It's under the rug, and I want to leave it there. So I don't want to make too big of a deal about it. But it was a phase. And I'd walk in the courtroom, and certain things would be said in the courtroom from the bench. And I was just like, what is this about? So I don't know.
It comes all the way. It's from all sides, right? You think that it would be not so, though, especially in this day and age.
No, exactly. When I was formerly married.
Discrimination at its best.
Yeah, it really was. And it came more from the women judges again, as opposed to the guys, okay, the attorneys. But the attorney side breaking in is hard, and to get them to respect you. Now it's not as hard because they're more used to there being more women around, even in criminal law. But there's a saying that women, you're either too aggressive or you're bitchy, whereas a man can get away with it. Okay. And it's only because you're advocating for your client. And that's in any field. If you're a litigator, I'm a litigator. So I'm not like a corporate lawyer or a real estate lawyer. They may have different experiences. I'm not sure. They're stepping in a different type of boardroom. My boardroom's a courtroom. So
the real deal. Wow. You know, and people, I always say people judge people, and you judge somebody until you walked into their shoes.
That's true. People don't think of that.
Nope, they certainly don't. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears. I want to talk about Philadelphia.
Okay.
Krasner. Why?
Why? Which why? Why?
Why is he still here?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, the people who should have voted against him in re-election didn't. They actually were his supporters. We do need, and we have needed, some judicial reform, particularly in the criminal realm. But to the extent that it's been taken, I don't agree with it. And I've told Larry that. there's a balance. Criminal law has two purposes. It's to be punitive, but it's also to be a deterrent. If it's not enforced, if you're not getting along, particularly as the DA with police officers, you will not be effective in doing that. And I attribute some of the rise in crime, and I mean, all the criminal lawyers do, or most of the criminal lawyers, I should say, do, to the way that he's gone about certain things. On the one hand, it's good for my clients, because it helps me out in that way. On another hand, he's cut my practice and all criminal lawyers' practices, because now they used to hire privates because we could get better deals, or we worked harder to get deals than the public defenders. No offense to the public defenders. There's some really good ones, but we were just able to accomplish more. And now it's an even playing field. So a lot of times they don't hire us because they don't think they need to. On the police officer side, I still demarcate. I grew up in Chicago suburbs, back in the 60s, and I demarcate between a cop and a police officer. So a police officer is who you say good morning to and you see him and he helps you out, and a cop are the dirty police officers. For some reason with Larry, there's no demarcation. And this morning I heard that Detective Pitts got convicted of something finally, because he used to try to force witnesses to say certain things. Okay. Were certain police officers, certain detectives, that we as a defense bar would see patterns with, and we would go after them, meaning during our cross-examinations. So to the extent that Larry does that, that's a good thing. To the extent that he has a special division to deal with convictions that were based upon, potentially bad police misconduct or bad, maybe even district attorney misconduct, although that's definitely not as common, or was not, that's a good thing. Why he's here otherwise, given the climate, I don't know. I don't think that he's tough enough on certain crimes. There's also a difference in the crimes. There's a difference between a drug dealer, a small drug dealer, and a gun guy, okay, or a big dealer. There's a difference between marijuana, which is why Larry doesn't prosecute a lot of those. He prosecutes some, but not a lot, and fentanyl. Okay, so they're degrees, and like anything in the law, it's a balancing act, and I don't think that he's totally balanced. He's here because of the way elections are run in Philadelphia and the support that he's had. I mean, he had George Soros with a lot of money.
Money seems to trump a lot of things. Speaking of money, I want our listeners to understand something. Why is it okay to walk into a store and steal something that's $499.50?
Okay, with regard to
yes.
Okay, so on the retail, retail theft cases are different. Okay, they're tiers. So once you've had your third arrest for retail theft, it becomes a felony charge as opposed to just a misdemeanor charge. It also can become a felony charge if the amount of what you've taken is more. I think from a safety standpoint, a lot of the stores just let their employees, let the people go because they're worried about their safety of their employees. I think Larry doesn't prosecute them. Well, I can't really say why he doesn't prosecute them. On one level, a lot of people, you'd be surprised, a lot of them are homeless people that are stealing basic needs stuff like maybe shampoo or whatever. Some are homeless people or more indigent people who want to sell it and try to make some money. Some of them are drug users. Okay. So they take it to sell it so they can then turn around and buy drugs. So from a social standpoint, I think when you look at it, it's trying to understand the person and what you would ultimately do with them as some form of a sentence. I'll give you an example. I recently had hip surgery, and the Lululemon thefts over at Walnut Street. I was crossing from the square into the bank, and all of a sudden, this big girl and another girl who's carrying a lot of packages come running around the corner, and a security guard is behind them. And she almost knocked me over. And because I am how I am, had I not had that surgery, I would have stuck my leg out to trip her. Because once I realized what was going on, I wanted to stop it. That's me taking off my criminal defense hat, right? So the square was packed. It was late in the afternoon. People they just step aside and let everybody run. The officer winds up getting the girl that had the packages, I think, in the alleyway, and the other girl just comes sauntering back like it was nothing. And I took a picture. I put it on my Facebook post because I was really angry that she almost knocked me over, and I was still rehabbing. So I went into the store. I let them know that I had a picture if they needed it. That was the second time that day that they had been robbed. And then I see on the news a few days later where they caught this head of the ring that was robbing in Philadelphia and out in the suburbs. And lo and behold, that was the girl that almost knocked me over. So when I posted it, some people were really upset at me, saying, that's not a cool thing to do or whatever. But we're all citizens, and I love my job. When I have a client, I represent that client and I defend that client. But some of this stuff, like the retail theft, it just needs to stop. And I don't think maybe they need a special program, because divide them up. If they are homeless, then give them services and help them to try to uplift them and get them out of that. If they're homeless and a drug addict, then you take that route to try to help them. And you can do that through creative sentencing, as opposed to just not doing it at all. At this point, Maria, our police force is down. They're leaving in droves. When they can hit drop, they're leaving. And so the issue is the ones that are left behind.
That means that they're ready, that they can retire, right?
Exactly. That means they can retire early.
For people that don't know.
And they get extra benefits. Okay, that's what it means. They can retire at a certain amount of years, and they get incentives to retire at that point. So we're not replenishing the force as quickly as we've been losing the force. And so when you have that, then it also becomes a priority as to what they do. Are they going to go looking for someone who shot someone, or are they going to go look for a retail theft guy? So I think that's part of the reasoning, but you can't just permit it if you're the district attorney. You just can't.
I mean, look what happened in San Francisco. $300,000 robbed out of the Nordstrom. Stores closed down now.
And that's what's happening here. There's a Wawa near us down on South Street that every night on my Citizens app, I'm seeing where they're being robbed. I live near the Walgreens, and they get it all the time. They're the ones that got broken into by a bunch, or ransacked by a lot of big group of young people, kids, a few years ago during July 4th. And so for a while they had a security guard there, but now they don't again. And again, just like I said, the Walgreens employees are told just let them go, because the stores are afraid of safety and liability, for not protecting their employees if they don't have security guards there or police officers there. So, and then they don't always prosecute them. And that could be one reason why Larry doesn't do it. If somebody, like you said, somebody $2.99, right? $4.99 worth of goods or whatever. And that's usually it's a lot lower than that. But a lot of times the stores won't send their representatives to court. So then it winds up being thrown out. The case winds up being thrown out anyway. So to some extent, it may be saving judicial time and police time, quite frankly, from processing and arresting someone, versus the way that it would be if you were arresting every single person that did it.
Wow. Well, it's definitely, I'm hopeful for the new administration that there's things that they're putting into place that will help our city be great again. Make Philadelphia great again.
How
do we make Philadelphia?
She's trying. So I think
K&A.
The city has so many problems, and I have a neighborhood office. I'm up in North Philadelphia, and there are so many issues. They kind of call it West Kensington, but it's really Fairhill. So a lot of the displaced people from Kensington, actually, they came over when they closed the viaduct over on Aramingo, or on my corner, and at 5th and Indiana. And some of them are genuinely homeless people. A lot of them have now left. In the last couple of years, they've been there. They'd sit outside and play chess. They were really nice guys. And then some of them are drug users, and some of them are drug sellers. So what's happening is, with the displacement that's going on up on Kensington Avenue, is they're just spreading out to different communities. And the other night, I had a guy, I have an alleyway that's gated by my house, like an easement. There was a homeless guy back there plugged into my electric socket outside, watching TV on a laptop. And that's downtown.
What?
Night before last, Maria. I went out to get something about 11 o'clock at night from the car. I was doing some work, and I needed something else from my briefcase. And I saw this coat hanging there, and I was like, what is this coat hanging there? And then I walked over, and there was a guy there. He's a former veteran. He didn't know about VMC and stuff, so he was informed about VMC, and he could go get benefits. They'll help him with housing and everything. But that's what our homeless population is. We are seeing, on my street in particular, we're seeing a lot more homeless people. And I think
we've seen a lot more. We have people that now live in our area that didn't used to live around here before COVID as homeless, and I see them all the time. I actually, say hello, and because they literally live somewhere in the neighborhood, I'm not sure where, but I see them every day, every other day. Same handful of people between 21st and 22nd Street, between South and Catherine.
Yeah, well, I'm around this area. We have a homeless shelter up the block that I think they reopened, but there are a lot more people on the street. There's a lot more people staying around the Walgreens, and it's an issue. As a homeless advocate, I talk to all of them. I ask them if they need anything. I'll bring clothes to them. I'll bring them water. I'll bring them whatever, once I get to know them. But having them tapping into your electricity and over a secure fence, almost in your literal backyard, was a little bit unnerving.
I I can only imagine. And I do see that there, and we know this because we're familiar, and you're very familiar, but involved with the veterans community in the sense of there are a lot of homeless vets, and telling them where to go. A lot of them don't know that there is help for them. So I think that's really important, being an advocate for them. And they've given so much to our country. And my God, like, we have to help. Sometimes people don't even know the help is there.
No, I mean, this
Giving
gentleman,
back and being a contribution
you're
is really
absolutely,
what life's about, actually.
and that's the thing. I mean, that practicing law and being the way that I am, um, I can be a resource for people just like you can. You know, you're active in the community, you know about different resources, you can enable these people to maybe get help and support that they need, you know, on a different level. But that's important that we as a community are informed and do things like that.
Oh, 100%. Going back to the police officers, I did see a big campaign on the SEPTA buses. I don't
Yeah.
ride SEPTA, but I see them go down the street. That there is a big campaign pushing for police officers. I hope they pay them more money.
They need to pay them more money. But we're one of the biggest cities with the lowest funding for our police officers. There was a billboard. This will crack you up if you didn't see it. It was up on 95. I think it was for Washington, D.C., advertising how much they pay a beginning police officer and how much more it is than Philadelphia, trying to lure people
Wow.
to go down there instead of stay here. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to do
Wow.
that.
I did not see that billboard, but that's that goes to show you. If that isn't a sign of the times, I don't know what is.
Yeah. It's across the country.
So
Yeah.
it's a it is it's not just even across the country, it's a global problem. It's across major urban cities in the world. Yeah, you have a lot of the same problems in London, in Paris. Not sure about Rome, but a lot of the main cities, look at the Barcelona, they're boycotting tourists because there's so many Americans flocking to Europe this summer instead of Ocean City, New Jersey. Once the rents go up to a point where it's cheaper to take your family to Europe for 2 weeks, you got to rethink that rent over there.
Oh, that's true. That's absolutely true. Just
Yeah.
takes
There's
some time.
actually, yeah, yeah. Okay. So switching gears. Ready?
Ready.
All right. My question for you. Guilty pleasure. What is your guilty pleasure?
Mm. I mean, I like to go out happy hour with my friends. I do that like once a week. When my mom was around, we would go. Um, Other than that, I mean, I work. You know, I go to sports. I'm trying to take more trips this year and take a little more break for myself. So I like traveling a lot, but I don't.
What's the next travel spot?
I'm finishing my 50 states. I'm going to Alaska, Washington State, and Oregon in September. I just booked it. So I wanted to do
Oh,
it by 50 and I didn't. And yeah, so I'm finishing my 50 states.
that's fantastic. I haven't been to all 50. I've been to a lot, but not all. I have I don't know how many left, but I haven't thought about it. That's cool. I love that. 50
Yeah,
states. Cool.
bucket list.
Okay. I love it. So, what are you most excited about for your future? What gets you out of bed? Like, if someone say, "Oh my God, I'm so excited about XYZ."
See, it's nothing. I love trials. Okay. I love trials. I love going in and getting to do a trial. I love fighting for my clients. I love my clients, regardless of what type they are. They could be a family court client, they could be a criminal. You get to know them as people. So that's what gets me excited is doing my job. I'm kind of thinking about retirement. Um, I just don't know if I'm one of the people that can really do it full time. So I don't know.
Plenty of people to help out there,
There are.
Rania. Plenty of people to help out there.
There are.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to be on the Be the Solution podcast, where it's all about solutions. The only person that can change our life is ourselves. And nobody can do it for us. So thank you for owning who you are and contributing to our community the way that you have over all these years and fighting for the underdog.
No, thank you. And thanks for having me on, Maria. It's always great to see you.
My pleasure.